Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively headed to the most unlikely of places for someone like me who has had some association with the National Football League over the last quarter of a century. And this is going to be a fun one because she is known by my friend Mike Silverhurst, too, as a princess of darkness. She's going to remain in the dark here on the video as Amy Trask, former CEO of the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders. And, of course, I follow her out on Twitter because she loves animals as much as I do. And also, I love Lucy memes. So I thought we could at least put the chocolate Lucy up at the very least. Amy, how are you on the eve of another NFL season?
I am well, thank you. And I love your idea of using I Love Lucy in the Chocolate Factory. An excellent episode.
Well, you use that one, a lot, quite frankly. And high, by the way, because that's your, and that's a pretty good one, by the way, that it sticks to you. If you had a guitar pick, it would say, oh, and high. We're going out to Vegas. My wife and I are going to Las Vegas. She paid $205 for a roofer, face value, right? A little different than on Mount Davis and the way it's been out in Oakland. And I could give you a hard time about the Syracuse Gannon thing, or you could give me a hard time about Ghost to the Post. I attended both of those games on behalf of your franchise, but this is an unlikely thing going out to Vegas for the beginning. And a lot of our fans wanted to go out, and they've been priced out as visiting fans. This is, according to JT the Brick, my pal out in Vegas, the biggest thing that's ever happened in Vegas. So can we deem this a success, at least for everybody who isn't brokenhearted in Oakland like a lot of my friends are?
Yeah, I think you just stated that beautifully. My heart does go out to those fans whose hearts are broken by the move. But I am, of course, thrilled for the fans who are thrilled by this move, as many are. The stadium is magnificent. And again, it's not mutually exclusive to say I'm both happy for the fans that are happy and heartbroken for the fans who are heartbroken. But in terms of the National Football League and what it attempts to do with stadium deals, an absolute success.
Well, let's go CEO here. That if you were, and I know that's always the fun game to play, but if Al were here and you were here and Mark were, like, is this something in your mind's eye that you ever could have envisioned? Because I'm sure Al's thought was to keep the team, and that's why he brought it back, whatever. But where along the continuum over the last 15 years? Because I always knew the league was sort of kind of never going to let Marca have LA, but I spent enough time in LA to know it's fertile Raiders territory, always has been, and the Rams and the Chargers are always going to be moving backward there. But for you to see Vegas, this shocking to you overwhelmingly? Would it shock Al?
Couple things. I do agree with you. There is, of course, a tremendous Raider fan base in Los Angeles. The one issue I will take with you is that I live in Los Angeles. I'm sitting in Los Angeles as we speak, and I do see a growing excitement about the Rams and the Chargers. So yes, there are a tremendous number of Raider fans here, always will be. But this market was without a team for roughly 2 decades, I think a little more than 20 years, perhaps. So it's going to take a while for the Rams and the Chargers to build their fan bases, but I see it happening. The nifty thing about Vegas in terms of those Los Angeles fans is it's an easy drive from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. So those fans in Los Angeles who were traveling to Oakland for the games are going to have an easier time getting to Las Vegas for the games, either a very quick flight or, as I noted, a very easy drive. A lot of the Raider fans in LA are in an area referred to here as the Inland Empire, which is a good hour closer to Vegas than the beach areas. So I think there'll be a lot of Los Angeles fans heading to those games.
Amy Trask is our guest. You should read her books. You should follow her on CBS. You should see her animals and her highs and her I Love Lucy's out on Twitter. You can do that at Amy Trask. That's Trask. So for the Vegas thing and this all to happen, you wore the CEO hat for a long, long time. You were privy to all of these meetings. Look, I sat here for 13 years with a bleeding heart, Amy. We lost the Colts, right? Indianapolis, Irsay. Are we going to steal the Cardinals? Is Al Davis going to come? Are we going to get Georgia Frontiere? Can we get the Culverhouse family? I mean, we chased everyone. I mean, I'm sure you ate some of Herbie Belgrad's crab cakes back in the day when Rankin Smith and Leonard Toast were the only ones, and Ernie Corsi maybe a little bit with Art trying to vote for Baltimore. We played that game about getting in the league. It's it's been a fascinating life, right? For anyone, any of the John Mogs or people that have been connected to any of this. I mean, I remember being at the Biltmore the day that Mark moved the franchise. Literally, I mean, I was sitting in the front row. There's Roger, and all I could think about was the Rosemont Chicago Hyatt, where Paul Tagliabue said build a museum, and we had to go steal a franchise. This franchise moving business has been a fascinating game over 50 years that I don't say brought on by Al, but certainly Al's business procedures led to a lot of this even 4 decades later. And it just feels like there's a lot of money in Vegas, and maybe in the end, Al's spirit and Mark, this feels like maybe the best of the best of the best deals ever.
Well, so much of what you said has me smiling ear to ear, but because I'm not on camera, for which I will
Right, you're
forever
so
thank
shy,
you, for which I will forever thank you.
Shouldn't
You
be.
couldn't see that I was smiling. And to one of your points, yes, we were courted by Baltimore. I didn't eat the crab cakes because I'm a vegetarian, but I did have a lovely time in Baltimore. And what Baltimore did with that new stadium and the revitalization of the harbor area is really magnificent. I believe, if I recall correctly, and there's a chance I don't, but if I recall correctly, we were the first regular season game in that stadium when it was launched. And by the way, if I remember correctly, and whether it was that first game or not, final play of the game, Ravens had too many men on the field, didn't get the flag. I complained about it to the official observer in the box, and he said game over. So I remember these things. You're right. Franchise movement is a very, very big deal for the league. And when I wasn't with the team when Al moved it from Oakland to Los Angeles. I didn't join the team till it was already in Los Angeles. But yes, that move by Al from Oakland to Los Angeles was opposed vigorously by the league. And now we see that the league works with the franchises when it comes to relocation opportunities.
By the way, the anniversary of that was the other day. Ray Lewis, Black Pants, Vinny Testaverde. I remember that day so I mean, it was one of the great days of my life to get a franchise back. I mean, my dad took me to Colts games. I was at Ghost to the Post that day, and also when Croner took the airplane into the upper deck after a Steelers playoff game as a little kid. But getting a team back, I'll never forget. I walked into the press box, the old press box, Memorial Stadium, and Al was there. He was sitting all alone in the back row in the white a little white windbreaker, and it was the first week of September, and Al was just larger than life, right? And everyone asked you about Al. There's nowhere you go. I rode on a plane with you and Al one time after an owners meeting. I believe it was the one not Laguna Beach, but what's the beautiful Bay Area, San Juan Capistrano, and Al was obsessed with women's college basketball. That's what I remember about Al. He talked about women's college basketball. He loves sports, right? So he would. JT tells me about this bar in Mount Davis and this thing and this big silver and black thing that we have to go and have a beer. Like, this is really this is a spirit to Al. When I step into that stadium, I'm going to feel Al on Monday night, right?
I hope you do. And you're absolutely right. He did love women's college basketball. And the reason I am responding on that particular point is so many people would say to me, oh, Amy, that was pretextual. He was just saying he liked it to be, correct. And no. He loved women's college basketball. And I laugh when I talk about it because I can't count the number of times I went into his office to get him to sign a document or to have a discussion with him about something, to show him financial statements. And he'd be watching women's college basketball. And I would try to talk and he'd say, shh, wait a minute. And I would have to sit there and wait until the game was over or at a break so I could get him to sign a document or pay attention to what I wanted to show him. So he really, really did love women's college basketball.
Well, this was the owners' meeting. This was March. The tournament was going on, and I remember he had the USA Today out, and he was all about women's brackets. And he sat across the aisle from me. I just sat down in Southwest, and all of you got on with your Raiders stuff, and I was coming from the owners' meetings too. Amy Trask is here. She writes books. She does nice things for animals. She's she shows her face on CBS from time to time as well, with a bunch of other friends and Andrew Kramer and a whole bunch of different people. On the eve of the season, I'm really excited in a fan way to get on a plane and do this weird thing of going to Vegas and the gambling side, which we'll get to. But there's so much uncertainty. Tom Brady's winning Super Bowls at this point, right? We have Lamar Jackson doing this thing nobody's ever done before. The Ravens are trying to win in that way. The league, once you breathe air into it on Thursday night and we get on this carpet ride back to LA and another stadium, new stadium will be coming to hopefully for Super Bowl in 5 months. But the league always manufactures excitement because it's exciting because Art and Al and Pete and all those people figured out how to make this thing this good for everyone in America.
It's a tremendous, tremendous game. And the league has done a magnificent job of maximizing the excitement for the most people possible. And in that regard, I will give a shout out to the league for everything it did last year in the midst of a global pandemic to have a full season and make it through a Super Bowl. And we're not through all of these issues yet by a long shot. Of course, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And the league is going to have to navigate that again to get in a full season. And it's going to be something we're talking about throughout the season. But at the end of the day, when you put all the issues aside, and when that ball is snapped and the game begins, it's just quite simply a fun, terrific game.
Well, I'll tell you what, once the Amy for commissioner becomes like a hashtag, because I've seen these things, Amy. So when that happens and I get on your bandwagon and I say, all right, let's give Amy the job. I hear it pays $40 million a year. I don't know if you need that kind of work, but what are the if they call you tomorrow, Roger says, you're my number 2, 5-year deal, come on in. What are the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you see in a way that I can't even see it? I mean, I see injuries and where the sport and safety as I think that's 1A. In the same way, I live in Baltimore, it's crime. Everything else, you have to take care of people. But for the league, I remember Dick Cass saying to me 15 years ago, there are a lot of stadiums that are going to have trouble selling tickets. We need to make the game exciting. We need to have people in the stadium. Amy, that virus has come to Baltimore. I had to relinquish 2 of my PSLs, couldn't give them away, couldn't find people to take the seats. Since the knee happened in Wembley, we have empty seats. We have Lamar Jackson, but we have empty seats. The Ravens market me now on Facebook to buy single game tickets. I've been a PSL holder 26 years. None of that existed the first 22 years. So Dick had some prescience, and he was almost Dick for commish at one point as well when Roger got the job. But for you, what do you see 3 or 4 things that I should be thinking about if I'm coming to league meetings?
I don't have those 3 or 4 things on the top of my mind. I will tell you, though, that, if you want to talk about being a commissioner, talk about moving the league office to Malibu, then we can have that chat. As to empty seats in the stadium, look, we're going to get through this pandemic. You talk about not having experienced empty seats prior to these last couple of years. We've never lived through a global pandemic prior to these last couple of years. But I will say this. It is hard and it is expensive to go to a game. You buy the tickets, you pay a lot of money for parking if you choose to drive. If, for example, there's no public transportation to get you there. Concessions are expensive. You're going to spend on one beer what you could probably spend just to get a 6-pack or more of beer in your house. It takes a lot of commitment to go to a game, financial commitment, time commitment. Right now, you could sit at home. As I said, the food and beverage is cheaper. You don't have to deal with traffic or parking or public transportation. You can have all of your devices on. You can be watching multiple games at the same time on different devices. You can be playing fantasy football, all of those things. So the league is going to have to continue to do things to induce people to come to the stadiums. And I'll tell you one thing they must do is find a way to get terrific connectivity in the buildings. It's hard to have enough connectivity. I'm talking about Wi-Fi now, not as much cellular, when you've got 70,000 people in a building. But people who are coming to the games are going to be wanting to do things on their devices to manage their fantasy teams. So I think the league is going to have to make that easier to do. And I think the league is going to have to recognize the commitment it takes for people to go to the games and to provide them with opportunities when they are there that aren't available at homes. I'm not talking about simply giving season ticket holders a hat or a backpack, but experiential opportunities so that people going to the expense, both financial and time, of going to a game get to have experiences that people at home don't.
Well, I'm landing in Las Vegas for a real game with the Raiders and gambling and bet and everything. You just mentioned the betting part of this will be awakened very, very quickly when I see the lights when I'm landing in McCarran, right? I mean, the league's all in on betting. That's where the money's going, right?
Well, look, the world has changed in that regard. There's always been what's that line from Casablanca? What? There's gambling? There's gambling in Casablanca. I don't know the exact line, but you know what I'm talking about. There's always been gambling. The issue is it hasn't been legalized as it is now in many, many jurisdictions. So look, we're past the point where gambling is only done under the table, offshore, in behind closed doors. It's legal now in many, many, many jurisdictions, and the league has embraced that and is doing sponsorships and all of those sorts of things. So for those people who like to gamble, that's a good thing. The league is going to have to be extraordinarily careful, not only to avoid improprieties by teams and players and coaches and staff, but to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. The league's come a long way. Look, when we first put fantasy football information on Raiders.com, within 5 minutes of launching that, and by the way, it wasn't launching the ability to play fantasy, it was just fantasy information. Within 5 minutes of launching that, the phone rang, my private line rang. It was someone from the league office, and they said 4 words: Amy, take it down. So the league has come a long way since that.
There's no doubt. Amy, I know your time's short. I really appreciate that. And, to plug CBS one last time, home of Brent Musburger at one point, who's moved to the other side. I'll see him when I land in Vegas, and Jimmy the Greek. So I go back to my childhood when they were talking about +3, -4, and now all of a sudden, at least it's all on board. I really appreciate your visits, your wisdom. I love following you and what you do for animals and your sense of humor. And at some point, I hope to watch an I Love Lucy episode with you, okay?
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I will look forward to that.
I hope everyone goes out and buys your books and supports you. And if there's an Amy for commissioner thing, I'm all in on you. I'm letting you know, all right? I mean,
don't wish that on a girl.
Well, I hear you're good at making decisions.
Amy,
thank you very
much.
much. Hey, Amy Trask joining us here. You can follow her out at CBS. You can follow her Twitter at Amy Trask, out on the social media place. You can find us every single Friday. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour local edition. We're going to be at Costas next Friday at the Chaucer to kick it off before the Raiders game. You'll hear that out at BaltimorePositive.com as well. Also, big thanks to all of our sponsors who made the Crab Cake Tour rock and roll, including the Maryland Lottery. We'll be telling you more about that as we move forward. Royal Farms, our friends at Wise, where I picked up some delicious coconut water to keep me going and uncramped. And of course, Dennis for giving me the Blue Bronco to go down to the beach as well. He'll be here on Thursdays and Sundays all football season long. You can find me Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, anywhere the internet is served. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive.